let's start with this Raneem's law story. Now, to clarify, it's not actually a law, it's not statutory law, it's what they're calling it. It's a plan of action, really, that the government has said that in response to the awful death of Raneem Uday, who was killed by her so-called partner at the time. She was in an abusive relationship, despite the fact that she told police and authorities a number of times that she felt her life was under threat. 7 times, in fact, I think close to the time of the killing. And nothing was done. And in the end...
we have the photo.
Yeah, in the end, we should... And part of this plan is to see experts in 999 police force rooms to answer these calls. Let's have a listen to one of the phone calls that Raneem made.
He's drunk as well, and he might just get a knife or something and do something to us.
Okay. All right, we'll go back to your mum's. If he turns up there, call 999, okay? And we'll get someone to see you tomorrow.
That's the problem when I'm calling and they're not coming quickly.
That was one of 4 phone calls on that night. Devastating for her and for her mother as well, who also lost her life. Absolutely devastating. Will this make a difference, Caroline, in your view?
I think having people in the control rooms that are taking the calls are trained and aware, and having someone there alongside who can be, if you like, the champion, if you like, of making sure that this is put into practice. Because you can have as many guidelines as you like, if the culture isn't taking that on board and isn't part of that everyday practice when you receive a call, then something more needs to be done. But it can't be just one person in that call room. That person has got a role to make sure that everybody in that call room understands what they need to do. I think there are things about, for example, that actually when people ring up where we know, for example, there are injunctions against violent partners, or there's a series of incidents like this, one would hope that actually those calls would be flagged. So when it comes up, it is aware that there is an injunction against a violent partner.
So would that be
and
a technical assistance as well?
Yeah. I think you have to have
the individuals receiving the calls, that they should have something on a screen that starts literally flashing.
I think absolutely. I think there's a whole number of things that need to be... We need to be assured that that is there. I think there is ability to flag numbers when they come in for different reasons, but we need to make sure not only about having, which I think is important, having a person who will drive this in those control rooms, but there are other things to do as well. And also, Kate, you know, there's a wider thing beyond the control rooms as well. Amongst the sort of those police officers who go out, how do they treat victims of domestic violence, and how do they actually act on it? How do they enforce the orders that are meant to prevent these men from even knocking on the door in the first place? Just,
you know, a bit of detail that came out of the inquest in 2022. I find this shocking, reading about this last night and reminding ourselves that her aunt, who we're going to speak to later, amazing person who's really done so much working with Jess Phillips to bring this law to fruition. Noor Norris at the inquest said that following Taryn's violent behaviour, her niece called the police 7 times. Her quote, "They didn't really listen to her properly and didn't take her seriously. They'll say to her, 'You're wasting our time. You need to deal with him yourself. Kick him out. You can't call us all the time. Ask him to move out.'" I mean, that doesn't sound like the sounds of 999 police. That's like you're speaking to a mate for advice.
Callous, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
it's exactly to Caroline's point, is that the way that we treat domestic abuse, there's almost a sort of misogynistic element to it, which is don't waste police time, because the way that violence against women and girls is treated, I'm afraid to say, is different. And that's why people campaign on issues about violence against women and girls, because there is still that view. And it's not that people actively think this way, it's a cultural thing, which is this belongs in the private realm. But yet every day we see instances of women and girls being killed as a result of this.
What can be done then? Because, you know, there needed to be a greater empowering all round in this situation, didn't there? Because the police are saying callously and wrongly and ignorantly, just kick him out, when the physicality of that was clearly impossible. I had no way of doing that. But, you know, were there other people there that could have supported and empowered? Is this a wider thing? Because she was forced to stay.
Well, I mean, look, the police have a role in this, but there are other agencies and communities that if there was joined-up thinking across the police with partner organisations, whether it's Women's Aid or other sort of charities and voluntary sector, the local authority or what have you, you know, if there was a bit more joined up here, I'm not saying this would have been saved, Raneem in this situation and her mum, but the truth is that in something like that, you would hope where there would be contact.
Yeah.
It wouldn't just be the police; they would signpost
hear that
and bring
so
other
often,
people in.
don't we,
And the
with
joined-up
children
work just doesn't seem to be happening.
I do worry, though, that if we talk about the state intervening in every space, is that actually going to deal with the cultural issue around the fact that this seems to be acceptable for certain people and for them to think that actually it's totally fine because it's just a private matter for you?
And
Well,
listen,
you had that sentence, didn't you, the day after they got married?
Yeah, exactly. You know, and this is the point. And let's not forget, actually, the real issue here is men, right? OK, in this circumstance. It's men that need to sort themselves. And the signs have been there a long time with this evil man who's now serving at least 32 years in prison. The day after they got married, and she felt she was forced into this marriage by him, that he said, in our culture, I don't know what culture he was referring to, there's no divorce, so the day I leave you will be the day I kill you. So she knew very early on. She must have shared this with people. Other people must have known this, but there is a culture that we just... I think, if you think about all of our families, you know, all of our families, we've all heard of stories of domestic abuse. Now, we don't do enough about it. That's the cultural issue. And these men, I mean, if he's done it once, he's probably done it before.
But it's not just about people being complicit or being silent, because some people don't want to necessarily get involved in other people's business. We can't police the way people do that. But there is that idea that he has decided, and I don't want to sort of put something on him, but from my perspective, this is about a man taking a decision that a woman is his property or that he can choose to do whatever he wants with her because she's a person in her own right.
Sorry to interrupt you, Caroline, but just one thing that just on a positive note, one empowering thing that's been suggested that's already happened is a 999 call with, rather like for a long time you've had in bars, that if you have a problem, you go in and say, is Sandra in tonight? And that alerts the bar staff that you're feeling threatened some way. This was a 999 call from last month where a similar principle is developing. Let's just have a quick listen.
Hello, police. What's the emergency?
Pizza delivery.
Pizza delivery? OK, do you require pizza delivery or do you require the police? If it's the police, say yes.
Yes.
OK, is the person that's scaring you at the property now?
Yes.
No problem, police are coming, OK? Have they got any weapons? Answer yes or no.
No.
If he threatened to hurt you, tell me pepperoni. If he threatened to hurt the children, tell me cheese.
Pepperoni.
OK, the police will be with you very, very shortly, OK?
Now, that is extraordinary. It's not to suggest that every call should be asking about pizza, but that person on the other end of the call was aware enough to have a system, whether it be that you said it was the Metropolitan Police, by the way, that 999 call from, was aware enough to say that, for instance, the woman might be able to say, I need an electrician or something, or I need something else, and then you just check whether it's a misdial and they're looking for a local plumber, or whether it's actually, you know, for something real. And that sort of training seems very good.
I think that is a really good example of where actually anybody in that control room is trained, confident and tuned in to be able to react quickly when that sort of calls in and knows what to do. And I think that speaks to a situation that women often find themselves in, is where the person they're fearful of is present and they are in that situation. Now, if that was happening throughout every workforce and if these specialists in control rooms can help make that happen, that would be a step change, I think, in terms of giving support in the proper way. But also, you know, that was a brilliantly handled call by that woman. And that's what we need by women and men to happen.
Absolutely. Well, we're speaking to Jess Phillip and Nor Norris, that you mentioned, the aunt of Raneem, who's brilliantly campaigned for this to take place after 8 o'clock this morning, but thank you on that.
Yeah. There's a theme this morning, and it's not a nice theme at all, but yet again, another woman who's been failed by society, by her employers. Jaisley Beck. A coroner ruled that Jaisley Beck killed herself partly because of the Army's failure to deal with harassment.
I mean,
she was
so harassment, isn't it? Just not to jump in, but there was one particular line that shocked me. So not just the fact that she was being horrifically harassed by one member, but also at a social event, and she was a very successful young soldier. One event, the battery sergeant pinned her down and tried to kiss her at a work social. Now, in what workplace and in what situation where something that public happened, which she was complaining about distress, did that not get taken forward and dealt with? There's got to be something wrong with the system there, hasn't it? And the self-policing and investigating within the army.
Yeah, I mean, he was also her line manager. For what that's the right.
Exactly.
I mean, he was her superior.
The person she was complaining to.
And if you feel like that's not being listened, who do you go after to that? And there is an issue, I think, with lots of orgs. It's not just the army and in this, but the truth is, there is some issues here around, and we've heard it before, not in relation just to sexual harassment, but racism as well. The fear of reporting up the line because it will be held against you. She was a vulnerable person. She joined when she was 16. There's a duty of care to that teenager.
Yeah.
And she was let down. And in this case, there were massive consequences because when other harassment started happening, including a guy, again, a superior to her, sending her 3,500 unwanted text messages, a 14-page document which was like a stream of consciousness about how he felt about her. She didn't feel confident enough to report that because of what had happened with this event, because effective action wasn't taken. So it does look like that the government is going to seriously consider that there needs to be some sort of independent channel for women and men to be able to pursue this when they're in the armed services, and maybe that's long overdue.
And so the coroner, ruled that the actual lack of action and the inappropriate response, if we can put it that mildly, of those around her was actually contributory and in more than a minor way to her suicide.
But what's interesting about this is that, if you look at this case, the details are horrific, but there are other women who've come forward who were training with her and have talked about basically being locked up on the base. So it's the attitude, again, it's another cultural question, which is the way that we protect women is by limiting them and essentially putting it in a situation that says, you are the ones that need to be confined in order for us to be able to keep you safe. That is not a sensible way of going forward or of being able to bring women into the military service.
Yeah.
But these high-ranking officers within the military, where is the discipline going to come and an example to be set of them? But why are they allowed to behave in this way without anybody checking that culture? Because they must have known that female cadets were being locked up at this point.
All too sadly, it happens in many sort of societies, many groups, and sport is not immune to this either. Last night, yesterday, it was announced that Luis Rubiales found guilty of sexual assault of Jenny Hermoso. You remember this. He's the Spanish Football Federation president and was found guilty of sexually assaulting the player Jenny Hermoso for kissing her without consent after they won the 2023 Women's World Cup final.
And we all watched that, didn't we, in real time, as it were, because it was such a celebratory moment.
I remember saying to my husband, oh, are they an item? Because the way he... Do you know what I mean? The way he grabbed her almost around the face and pulled it, I thought... They must be,
Yeah,
exactly. It wasn't the sort of, continental kiss on both cheeks or something like that. I thought, hang on, there must be an item here. And obviously, later on, you find out, no, that was not the case at all.
I mean, he's appealing, and he said he asked, but she was absolutely adamant that she was pressured into it.
But I find the punishment ridiculous. I mean, he's been fined £10,000.
It's probably peanuts to him.
It's not a lot to him. He's going to appeal that. I mean, how's he going to learn a lesson? He clearly doesn't think he's done anything wrong anyway.
Well, I think the court of public opinion in this instance, him having had to step down from his job, I think is a testament to how people feel about this issue. But what made me so angry about it was, yes, it was kind of the way that he assumed that he could just go in. But it was her moment, it was her victory, and he just took that from her. In that, she can't ever look at that picture and say, do you know what I did? I won the World Cup. It's always going to be about that.
Now, I want to talk about Ukraine and Trump, but actually, it just occurred to me, if we're going to talk about Trump, and we've talked about what the stories we've talked about so far this morning, he's the leader of the free world, and a lot of people accuse him of being a misogynist. And one of the first things that were controversies when he was leading up to be president the first time, where he was caught on mic saying he grabs a P word. Now, I've spoken to, even friends of mine who talk about that moment, and they just sort of brush it off. Now, if your leader of the free world is able to say that and get away with it, be elected, is it any wonder that this is happening in our society?
I don't think we can just turn it into this one person, because
I'm not saying it's one person, but I'm saying
because the thing is, you're right to say that it's about the sentiment and the standard that is set by people who are supposed to be in authority and you're supposed to look up to. I mean, not that anybody looks up to politicians anyway, but this is a longer... Yeah, I know. Sorry, love. But actually, it's a longer-term thing, because if you go back to the Clinton administration and, you know, there's accusations around Monica Lewinsky as an intern, what you actually see is that for a long time there have been a lot of men who have abused positions of power and authority.
JFK.
And legitimising this has not just been about the gratuitous way, in the way that President Trump has previously spoken about women, but actually something that has been percolating under the surface for a very long time.
Everything's coming out about...
Is there a difference between the relationship between Monica Lewinsky and Bill Clinton and the relationships that are reported to have happened with JFK and abuse and the language that Trump used? Because I think some people would think, you know, in any walk of life, there's going to be people that are powerful and people who are not, and relationships between those levels of power may or may not happen. But it's the abuse of it, isn't it? And the misogyny surrounding it that's a problem.
There's nuance to it, I think.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, I think, you know, we have these public personas of people, you know, whether it's politicians or other people in public life, OK? And they have a persona, they have a character. And then the curtain's drawn back or the WhatsApp group is discovered, and suddenly these people are not like they appear to be. And that reveals a lot. And I think, you know, clearly, you know, Trump stuff is out there, but there's probably a lot of men going around thinking, oh, my God, I'm glad nobody heard me say this somewhere.
Yeah, OK. Well, let's dig into sort of the Ukraine then at the moment. I mean, you know, he is the president of America. And in a way, what we've been talking about is what sort of UK government has got to deal with. You know, in the end, doesn't matter in a way what he may have said or done in the past. He is the US president, and, well, he's making everyone know that, and he's using that power. I mean, now there seems to be a real shift in strategy from the US in terms of bringing in Russia from the cold, and he's sort of potentially doing a deal with Russia without Ukraine. Zelensky's been told to tone down his language that he used against Trump. Starmer is due to arrive in Washington next week. It's a real moment, isn't it? And David Lammy in the front of The Guardian has sort of told us, remind ourselves about Putin, and when he talks about, you know, pragmatism, it's imperialism, but not really pointing fingers at Trump. How's Starmer going to play this one, Caroline? Because it's a reckoning moment, isn't it?
Well, Starmer has come out on the front foot, as have many others, in terms of saying, for a start, let's just be clear, President Zelensky is not a dictator. And I sort of feel with Trump, you know, it's a bit like maybe he just... I mean, I'm not surprised in terms of this, in terms of his statements on this and other matters. And maybe he thought when he had the 90 minutes with Putin that everyone would say, oh, wonderful. And, of course, he came out of that saying, basically seemed to suggest that NATO was off the table for Ukraine and actually Russia was going to get all the land back. Well, that was very unhelpful to any peace negotiations. But Zelensky pushed back. And then Trump, like a sort of, you know, toddler throwing the prams out, toys out the pram, starts having a go again at Zelensky. So Starmer has made it clear that he doesn't accept that. But what Starmer needs to do here, and, you know, let's hope that recent utterances by the president aren't the last word in all of this, is demonstrate to President Trump how important Europe is and how important to Europe is a secure peace regarding Russia and Ukraine, and that actually we are their best allies. And that's his goal, really, in this meetings next week, is trying to achieve something of that nature.
The worry is, Sam, is who are we dealing with, though, exactly? You know, and looking at Trump, I mean, you know, Elon Musk is his sort of right-hand unofficial man who, a few weeks ago, was doing Nazi salutes
at the inauguration.
And it's happened again overnight at the Conservative Political Action Conference by Steve Bannon. Now, we're told Steve Bannon and Trump are no longer close friends, but he was talking about Trump and how he should be president for life and we should fight And this is what he did. Let's have a look. We wouldn't deal with these people anywhere else. It really compromises the UK, doesn't it, Selma?
But we can't not just deal with them because they are.
Well, then what does
the
that do to us?
administration. And look,
What does that do to us?
We can't give up. We've got to try and persuade,
Here's
you know.
the central question, right? You're saying, how does Starmer handle this? The central question is, we need to figure out whose side America is on.
Yeah.
And we need to figure out how you actually make this of interest. If you're talking about having a deal-making president, which he loves to say, I'm such a big deal-maker, then the only thing that we can do is say, why is it in your interest to carry on this Western alliance against, you know, an aggressor like Russia? But until we start making those points, what Trump is always going to say, because he thinks about business, not politics, is what's in it for me? Whether it's minerals coming out of Ukraine, whether it's more spending on defence or whatever, we're going to have to offer something, and that is just the realpolitik situation of it. But not engaging is not an option. However
some
disturbing
will say that
this
means
is.
you're legitimising fascism.
But how can we legitimise fascism in a democratic process where so many Americans have voted this man into the White House? It's really difficult to say, well, we're just not going to engage with you, one of our closest allies and partners.
Because it's democracy that's put in there.
But then our stance of bringing democracy and openness to other parts of the world when we've gone to wars in the Middle East and beyond, you can't have these dictators, you can't have these people.
But we've all retreated from that.
But the British government has always, you know, every government has to deal with some really horrible people around the world.
Okay.
You can't opt out. And the truth is, he's not going to be president for life. He's a one-term president now. He's done 4 years in time. He can't stand.
Right.
Well,
I'm sure he'll
something
try.
that I know makes you very angry. We talk about Elon Musk, talk about Jeff Bezos, people supporting Trump and having conversations with Trump. Now Jeff Bezos in charge of James Bond.
I'm very mad about this.
Are you? I mean, the Daily Mail says, don't let big tech steal UK's creative genius. Is that what's making you furious?
This really, I think Starmer needs to bring this up with President Trump as well as part of it. How did we just give it, you know, we give away all this in the Chagos Islands, we've given away territory and sovereignty, we've given up our own decision to be able to control our defence spending, and now this.
You know what Trump's going to say? It's go, Mr. Starmer, I've been expecting you.
Yeah, oh my God, it's just...
With a cat on his lap.
Why is this allowed to stand? They're going to have some awful American actor playing Bond or something, aren't they?
No.
We're launching a campaign. Bring it back to broccoli.
I mean, there is
but the broccolis have given it away. That's the problem.
That's the problem. And with Lisa Nandy on the show yesterday, Culture Secretary, announcing all this money for arts and culture, museums and libraries in the UK. And it's such a hub of industry. It's not going to be important
well, exactly.
anymore,
I'm busily working in the sort of TV and film industry, trying to make shows, and the idea of America taking over our biggest golden asset, it's like, what chance have the rest of us got? I mean, it's incredible.
It is concerning, because I think Amazon produced some sort of other programme that had a sort of Bond-like thing, which was like a reality programme, and it sort of dived, basically. And it's that creative side of it. What the hell are they going to do with this? I mean, it is such an asset, and it works. And I think the last Bond film was absolutely brilliant.
Extraordinary.
But so if they want to destroy that, it's like Agatha Christie. Don't mess with what works.
Don't mess with it. So who's your pick for Bond?
Well, I always fancied... Oh, well, actually, I should rephrase that.
Hello.
I always had a shout-out for Idris Elba, but he apparently has ruled himself out completely from it.
I wanted Idris.
Did you?
Okay.
There's somebody quite close to home that's up for it.
Sean Fletcher, everyone.
Not me, no way.
Well,
mate, look at
God,
baby.
Sean, I do like that.
Who's that?
Sean Fletcher, everyone, the new band.
Goodness me.
I think Adel is you.
I don't know that it's going to be either, if I'm honest, but it's lovely. You look great there.
No.
Thank you, both of you. Fabulous. Couple of brilliant Bond girls this morning.
Jeff Bezos, if you're listening, the one thing about me, I'm cheap. All right, so you can make your millions with me, mate.